Hi everyone, welcome to the Human Advantage. Today, this is brought to you by Accelerator Solutions. I'm joined with two very exciting guests today, Frankie Woodhead and Simon Halls. And before we get into the topic today, we're going to be talking about Frankie and Simon. Would you just mind giving a quick introduction to who you are? Frankie, maybe you first.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Toby. Thank you for the invite to the Accelerator team. So yeah, nice to meet you all. I'm Frankie Woodhead. I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer here at Thrive Learning. We're a next generation learning platform designed to support colleagues with all of their learning needs. So whether that's businesses that want to support product enablement, sales training, compliance. We have around 500 customers around the world. So think Nando's, Volvo, and Summers. We've got a real variety of industries. I joined the business around a year ago. Really exciting time for us. We're growing about 50% year over year. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about AI and the kind of impact it's having to our industry. So thank you for the invite, Toby.
Great, no problem. Simon?
Yeah, thanks very much for the invite, Toby, and good to meet you both. So I'm Simon Halls, Director of Talent, Leadership and Learning at Just Group. We're a FTSE listed specialist financial services firm focusing on pensions and retirement industry. So have been fast growing, and my role is having responsibility for the talent and the learning agenda, looking, for example, at how we develop leaders as well as people managers and colleagues across the business in a whole range of skills, really behavioural and technical. And AI is really sitting at the heart of a lot of change within the business.
Great, perfect. And the reason I wanted to bring you guys, both of you together specifically, was I think we work very closely with both companies. We utilize the Thrive platform. We work with Just as a client, and really interesting dynamic. I think AI and technology are the centerpiece of both of what you do, but you have a wider viewpoint around how that enables people, how you still utilize technology to actually build human connection. So what we're going to spend hopefully the next half an hour, 40 minutes talking about is how do you get that balance right? And what does that future of work look like when technology is changing so quickly, but people at the same time seem to be craving being together and like connecting as human beings, particularly post-COVID. And Frankie, maybe I'll come to you first. And as you've been with Thrive for the last year, and obviously Thrive is growing very fast, and you've taken a very kind of central stance on both technology and AI and enabling people to learn and develop, but also with the recent acquisitions you've made, your CEO, Casey, is it Cassie, has a very nice, unique point around you don't want to lose the human element of learning. So I wouldn't mind coming to you first and saying, how are you seeing this in the market? What are your clients talking about, and how are you positioning this? And generally, how do you think about it?
Yeah. So as you say, I think it's been a huge change and enabler for the industry as a whole. I think we're very much embracing AI. Very much it started internally. So all of our engineers use AI every single day. We very much see it as a force multiplier, particularly for our senior engineers. The pace in which they can move, the speed in which they can get things done is just skyrocketed. So there's been a lot of these huge firms that have gone from kind of zero to crazy revenue. And I'm always kind of intrigued by businesses that grow so quickly, because there's generally something there they've hit crazy product market fit, because it just creates such a pace. So yeah, internally we're using it to do most things. Everyone's encouraged to use it. Secondly, if I look at our kind of consumer or business focused product, we have two real personas. We have our administrators, so people that work in learning and development teams. They're curating content, they're supporting their organizations to grow. We talk about like smart admin. So how can we provide technologies for administrators to work at scale? All industries have challenges on margin and investment, so actually being more productive and efficient is critical. But finally, we serve over 3 million learners at Thrive, so actually how they consume content, but also the human connection that you mentioned is really critical. So for us, we've recently launched an AI assistant. There's lots of AI assistants in the world. The unique part that we have is we have access to hundreds of thousands of proprietary documents. So if you wanted to understand the holiday policy for Jet2, we have better information than anyone would have on the public internet, because we have access to policies to their documents, so we can serve the accurate information. Similarly, coaching and being quizzed on particular topics is really interesting. It's a slightly different mode. But you mentioned the acquisition, Toby. So whilst digital is a huge part of our strategy, none of us have ever been hired or promoted by AI. we still speak to individuals. It's still our responsibility to encourage people and to grow people. So yeah, we recently acquired Guider, who are a mentoring firm, and that's all about ensuring we're able to join up large organizations with the right types of people, because ultimately it's humans that implement this software and get it done. So yeah, very much, I mean, digital and AI heart of the product, but we're very much sold and bought in on ensuring we connect our learners with mentors through some of the acquisitions that we've recently made.
Great, perfect. Yeah, it's I think that the acquisition profile that you've made is really an interesting one to bolt on to the platform that you've got, which is great. I suppose, Simon, just how do you guys think about this? Because I was with one of your teams this week, and one of the things they were talking about quite a lot was the secret sauce with a company like Just is the people, how they think about building propositions and how they grow people. And you obviously do a fantastic job of bringing in very, very high quality talent. And we work with some of your graduate teams, and the quality of the people is like outstanding. So how do you think about it from both a people and a learning and development perspective, and how are you finding that balance between upskilling people internally to understand the efficiencies of AI, but not scaring them, because it is quite a scary topic if you pitch it in the wrong way?
Yeah, and maybe if I start thinking about the opportunities that it offers for the business, and actually probably for businesses more generally, and particularly within our industry, is about unlocking productivity, scaling operational processes, and informing better decision making. So for example, it provides data for people who are closer to the work, closer to the customer, to allow them to feel more empowered to make decisions. And I think just more broadly, what AI is proving to be is a growth engine in what are politically and economically quite uncertain times, kind of thinking more broadly about the economy and the opportunities that are there. So I think it's going to have a profound impact on the way that companies and the way that we work. Things like creating new roles, particularly in the tech space. So AI engineers, prompt designers, transforming those existing roles, and it's going to potentially create opportunities to automate aspects of roles in areas like HR, marketing, finance. So for example, we used it on a project recently where we're looking at career frameworks within the business, and rather than manually going through lots of job profiles and trying to pick out skills and create job families, which would have taken weeks, we were able to use AI and to really shortcut that. And obviously to have a human element to check it and make sense of it, but we're able to use it just to make that much more efficient. So I think the key to it, as you touched on, is about how do you create that balance. And our focus in terms of from a learning and development perspective has been to capitalize on some of the opportunities that AI offers within the learning space. So, for example, around talent analytics, around actually AI in coaching can be a really powerful usage, being able to offer more personalized learning journeys, but actually at the same time recognizing that when you invest in learning and in-person learning, one of the important things you get out of that is strengthening connection and collaboration and a sense of belonging as well within the organization, all of which are absolutely central to our culture. So an approach that we've taken is, yes, we need to invest in developing the technical skills that sit alongside, as part of AI, but actually AI should sit very closely alongside those more sort of human skills. So we are investing in building skills around curiosity, collaboration, areas linked to sort of emotional intelligence, storytelling, all of those things that, yes, to some extent you can learn those things with content that might be delivered through technology, but that should sit alongside the sort of in-person training. So we have a big emphasis on that. And as you mentioned, Toby, particularly on our sort of early careers graduate program, where we really want to strengthen connections between those new joiners.
Yeah, and I'll come on to some of those skills in a second, but you've hit the nail on the head, and I think that's my philosophy as well, is if you can get that balance right between pushing people to think in a growth mindset. I think when we were chatting earlier this week, Simon, I think that was one of the points that I took away from like the prep session was AI is just another thing that is an enabler and is inefficient, and it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment. And someone said something to me the other day that AI is never going to get any worse, and not a change program that finishes. This is just now a way of working, and the organizations that are finding that right balance seem to be the ones who are winning, or at least thinking about it. I suppose in those examples that you just gave, is there more of an excitement or is there an anxiety, and how are you pitching that to the people? Is it purely this will make you better at your job and take away the bits you don't like doing, or is there something more in how you're describing it?
I would say absolutely there's more excitement than there is anxiety, if you think about the differentiation there. And I think that excitement in the business is reflected when we establish working groups and forums to bring together leaders in different areas, data, investment, risk, people, team, to talk about how we can apply AI in customer operations, in workforce development and productivity. So there's a lot of excitement. We're working on those policies and processes around ethical use of it, around how it can apply and implications to risk management, the governance of it. And there's a lot of appetite and excitement from people about upskilling in AI. So we're looking at building out an academy that really focuses on some of those core skills, both for leaders as well as for colleagues across the business, as well as maybe that group of people who really need the sort of in-depth understanding. So I feel that there's definitely a sense of excitement, and it's driving the ambition for people to upskill and really understand the technology. I think it's fair to recognise that there, like any change, there will be probably the flip side to that sort of excitement and fascination with it is maybe a bit of uncertainty about where it might lead. So but that, I think, is why it's really important to have the right conversations about AI governance, use of it, the ethical use of it. To have all of those conversations is really important, but definitely much more excitement than anxiety.
And Frankie, you guys have been kind of, I don't know, pioneering, maybe the wrong word, but have been very vocal about the use of it. Obviously, Kiki is a great example in a use case. So a slightly different question for you. When you're speaking to clients and they are looking at your platform and thinking about the power that it brings, how do you try and, not convince is the wrong word, but how do you educate them that this is something that is really important for them to think about, and you can enable that and help them start their kind of AI journey if they're not even thinking about it already?
Yeah, I very much agree with Simon. Like, I think we generally see a huge amount of excitement. Like any business, there's always kind of early adopters. So we launched in March. We've gone from kind of 0 questions to hundreds of thousands of questions every month now through the assistant. So we're seeing kind of 20% month over month growth through the usage of the tool. So like the numbers are not lying. It's certainly having a positive impact. But certainly there's been a different variance. So we always enable our customers to adopt this at their pace. We're not in the business of enforcing things or ensure. Administrators of our platform get the choice to switch things on. They can test it for admins only, so they get to try it out before they roll it out to tens of thousands of people. But ultimately, what we're seeing is really positive results. There's a few kind of use cases. So first one, if you're in a customer-facing role, that ability to get question and answers has been a problem forever. If you ever phone a call center and you've got a very specific issue, whether it's in financial services, in retail, in hospitality, you just need to have the knowledge at your fingertips. So that's where we're seeing like huge growth. I think LLMs are so good at just Q&A. Help me get to the answer very, very quickly. And keyword searching is no longer a problem. So that's kind of area one. I do think on the kind of our advice, if I become more internal now and I lead the product and engineering team, we're quite pushy with our senior engineers that we want them to use it because we do see it as a force multiplier, and we see all of them use it. We're actually quite the opposite to our junior members of the team. Because it can be quite easy to miss the fundamentals. It's like all of us in our jobs. You really have to have a fundamental understanding around relationship building and time management and Some of them core roles that you've never had a chance to learn until you go into the workplace. And particularly in engineering, it's very, very much the same. If you don't understand kind of core architectural principles or core coding standards, LLMs can be quite dangerous and AI can be quite dangerous. So we encourage the first 2 to 3 years in role, basically say you might not feel as quick, but actually getting a grasp of how it is to do things is better. So and that's through learnings. Like I'd say at the start, we were quite like encouraging everyone to use it, and that's just through trial and error. I do agree with Simon. Like clearly, when you're managing large amount of customer data, some of that is has personally identifiable information, like data security, and ensuring everyone is very clear. It's kind of fundamental. So we're investing a lot in controls and various audits and kind of attesting to a number of standards such as like SOC 2 and ISO 27001, and that's just ramping up because data has just been so widely shared now. But ultimately, we're super excited. Our customers are growing at a rate of knots. We have about 80% of our customer base now have switched it on, and everyone else has plans to switch it on. And most of the time, it's just they need to do some wider engagement with stakeholders, with risk committees, with some of their boards, because obviously everyone is dabbling in this area, but everyone is also forming a plan. And where a part of that plan, there's also a bigger picture plan that looks at it across the whole organization.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting as well. I think one thing that we definitely see is the organizations that have a specific use case or use cases in mind that are very clear how they're going to adopt or implement AI, and it's, starting simple and starting small and starting something that's quite specific and proving it out, but also thinking about the wider implications. You mentioned, Simon, like looking at having the people who understand the data involved, having your risk teams, having compliance teams involved very early to understand the implications of this, particularly in a regulated industry where you do have that PII data, very sensitive data. There is that risk around if you get it wrong, but you don't want to stop the progress and the adoption, and you want to keep the excitement. You need the people with the checks and the balances. And I suppose one thing just to pick up on that you both mentioned that I wouldn't mind just kind of transitioning into is that the technology is I've always seen it as an enabler, but I 100% agree with what you said, Frankie. When I started my career, and I think you both were probably in the same position, you learned by osmosis, you learned by being with people, you understood what etiquette looked like, you understood how to take meeting minutes and make PowerPoints look nice, and understood how to talk to people and write emails, all those things that I don't know if you see this particularly, or either of you see this, but post-COVID, when people were a bit more isolated, they didn't have that natural human interaction. And I'm definitely seeing that coming back, and people really wanting to be with people and being in the office, keeping the flexibility that I think came from COVID from a working perspective. But I suppose how do you build that in, particularly, maybe Frankie, I'll ask you first, in the sense of you are a technology first company, and how do you find that right balance, and how do you position those only human skills, and what do you think they are? Like the best people you've ever worked with probably have a core set of skills that they developed. Like, how do you think about that as a leader of kind of your in the business and in the industry?
Yeah, I must say on a personal level, I feel extremely lucky that I've kind of always been 2 or 3 years behind what are kind of major technological revolutions. Like I met my wife through like traditional means in a bar at university. So I didn't have to go through that whole, that cycle. Similarly, I didn't have an iPhone until I was in my 20s. So again, I felt like I missed the whole social media piece as well. But I felt I've always had the benefits of the new technology, but I've also been able to live my life without it. And I think I'm a father of a 4 and a 6-year-old young girls now, and I think the world in which they're entering is crazy. Like I think if I was actually chatting to my wife this week about if I was starting a dissertation, the way I started it 15 years ago is very different to how I'd start it today. My ability to write long form emails or text, I think, is actually diminishing because the tools that you have around you make it so much easier. So firstly, I think I feel extremely lucky personally that I've had the chance to learn them skills before technology kind of made it too easy.
Yeah,
I do agree. I think for the next generation, they have to learn to work within the new realms that they are working with. The way we encourage that is we do a lot of in-person training. We're a digital first technology provider. We have a lady called Helen Marshall, who's our Chief Learning Officer. I actually attended last week, prior to having 3 presentations this week, a 2-hour session around giving public speaking engagements and the types of things. And Helen's exceptional. She does podcasts, she does a lot of public speaking, she does a lot of panel events, and even just getting back into the swing of like actually doing public speaking on a VC call together is something I've not done for years, but I took so much value from it. And similarly, so we do a lot of in-person training, a lot of curated learning for our teams. We also do a lot of, we put a lot of expenses budget for getting people together socially.
Yeah.
So we're just in the process of opening a new office in London. We're going to be encouraging, as you said, Toby, that flexibility. I've very much valued that flexibility as a young dad. But we want people to come in a couple of days a week. If it works for them, if it doesn't one week, that's absolutely fine. We're going to be super, super flexible. But having corridor conversations, having non-organic chats that you would never have over a Zoom or a Teams meeting is so critical. And we want to, I mean, we don't see it as a cost line. We see it as a way to develop our teams, to have them strong bonds, and we'll ensure that when we have them budgets and social events that make that happen. I do think the world is different. Like, I don't see a world where people are in the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week, traveling multiple hours either side of the day. Personnel, certainly I wouldn't create a business like that, or I wouldn't work for a business like it. It may happen elsewhere. But for me, it's about creating environments where people can work together, build strong relationships, but still be enabled by technology, because clearly the productivity that Simon mentioned is very much there, and we need to capitalize on it.
Yeah, and I suppose, Simon, similar question to you, because I suppose one of the things that when I work with Just, you seem to have got the balance right between giving people the space to learn in their own way, but also bringing people together to learn in lots of different ways, whether it's some of the bigger group sessions where you bring in whole departments together to do something, the graduate scheme that you guys run, or individual team sessions. To Frankie's point, it feels like you don't see it as a cost line, you see it as an investment into the organization. And that's the culture of the organization, which is actually quite rare from a learning perspective and developing the people. So how do you think about it? And I suppose what's some of the skills that you're over indexing in from a people perspective rather than a technology perspective?
Yeah, so we have the hybrid model, as a lot of organizations have. And I think it is about really being that more planned and purposeful about how you bring people together for those types of learning events. So there's a little bit of a paradox in that AI is sort of transforming how we work, how we communicate, how we collaborate. And at the same time, we really need to, the skills that are going to differentiate are going to be around empathy and people's ability to collaborate and connect with one another, storytelling. Those human skills, I think, are becoming even more important, where AI could be almost commoditizing some of the knowledge-based aspects of the roles. So, what's going to differentiate organizations, what's going to be a source of competitive advantage in the future, are those the mindset, the behaviors, the culture that reinforce those sort of key behavioral skills. In terms of to your question about what are the skills that we're really focusing on, I think those are just the very human skills around empathy, influence. I mentioned storytelling, creative thinking. Those are some of the skills that we're focused on. But also a benefit of bringing people together, I think, is that sense of connection and belonging that I mentioned earlier. I think, a core part of our culture is people feeling connected to the purpose of the organization. We've got a really clear purpose, which is about helping people to achieve a better later life. So a connection to that, but also a connection to one another as well. Not just in immediate teams, but more broadly. So we're really purposeful about how we bring those teams together. And yes, we kind of augment with online training, virtual sessions, but if we can, then we'll bring people together in larger groups and focus on skills around things like all those areas that I mentioned, but skills like coaching, feedback skills, resilience. So it's sort of blending this focus on building out the tech skills and capability with those human skills. And I think that as I mentioned, that they're the ones that are really going to differentiate in the future.
Yeah, and that's that's our very clear view as well. I think if the organizations that understand that the people are going to be the differentiator and the secret sauce, and it's going to be in the quality of people, the relationships that they build, the context that they can provide. I think, Frank, you mentioned that data is so easily accessible, and large language models are great at searching data and giving you answers, but not great necessarily on the context, and they can't apply history of learning. And one thing that looked like something like, what is it, future past performance is not indicative of future gains. And I think that is the way I think about large language models. Sometimes they'll give you a very clear, very polished answer, which is almost hard to argue against because it's so well constructed, but it doesn't have the context. The other thing that I think of bringing teams together is around that diversity of thought. So again, if you don't bring people together from different backgrounds and experience across different levels, and there's an interesting piece going on I see around this kind of reverse mentoring or cross mentoring, where more junior people with a different value set, a different view of the world, who are the post Google generation, they don't even use Google to search anymore, which when someone said that to me a couple of months ago, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. But I think there's 6 generations of people working together for the first time in a workforce with extremely different experiences and values. So Simon, how do you think about that? Because I know you have the vision and the value set, to your point, is very clear. Just so when you hire people in, you hire for that type of value and culture. But how do you get that balance right between an older, maybe an actuarial type personality, and a new graduate coming through who has a very different mindset about how the world works? How do you deal with that on a day-to-day perspective?
Yeah, I think that as a leader, for example, managing multi-generational teams is profoundly important now. And so you mentioned about reciprocal mentoring. We have a program around reciprocal mentoring, which part of it actually is exactly that. It's connecting different generations and ways of thinking. I've taken part in that in terms of being mentored, and found it really, really, in lots of ways, kind of surprising and engaging, and I've learned a huge amount. We're also actually we haven't run it yet, but we're just launching later this year some skills training for our leaders and people managers about those challenges around how do you lead a multi-generational team. So I think it's a really important challenge. I don't know if we've kind of got the answers to it, but I think so much of it comes down to leaders having empathy, having the right conversations, listening skills, and creating an environment of psychological safety, where actually people feel able to speak out and present their viewpoints. I think if you can get those things right as a leader and as a people manager, then that creates that you get the most out of the diversity that you have within the team. So yeah, that's kind of broadly how we're approaching it.
And what about you guys, Frank? How do you think about it? Because I suppose I'd be interested to know what the demographic is of Thrive versus a company like Just. And do you think about it in a different way, or how do you approach it?
Yeah, I can very much feel old these days. We have placement students from Nottingham Trent University, which is where I went, and I was chatting to one of them that had just started. So I went to the Nottingham Trent University. I graduated in 2010, and his immediate response was, "No, I was 5 then." And I was like, "Oh wow!" And now they're coming into the world of work. So I very much agree with Simon. I think it's so easy to think the way you do things is the way to do things, and not to be open-minded. We have a really strong placement student proposition where we take 4 to 6 each year, generally from Nottingham Trent, because we're a Nottingham headquartered business. They come into our engineering team, our security team, our QA team. And we really want to foster. I actually had one-to-ones with a few of them last week. I was like, I want to hear everything that we don't do very well. Tell us the thing that we could be doing better, because they have such a different perspective around how things are being done. We speak a lot within our product team around we're not competing with other LMS providers around the world. We're competing with every other B2C consumer grade app that people have exposure to, whether that's Spotify, whether that's Netflix, whether that's a podcast series. That's how people consume content in their personal lives. And if you want them to do it in their professional lives, it has to be the same level of experience. We've actually hired a lot recently from more B2C background. So our design team is made up from people that worked at Uber and at Snapchat and at Careem, which is like a Middle Eastern version of Uber. And the thinking that they've brought into learning in a more of a B2C capacity has been amazing. Like it really has leveled up the product from the small moments of magic that make something feel really useful. So yeah, we're like on a demographic basis, a very broad split of geographic presence across Brighton, London, the Midlands, and then kind of nationally in the UK. From an age perspective, I'd say we probably, versus a traditional financial services provider, which is where I've come from before, I'd say we have a younger demographic by background because of the type of industry and the type of work that we do. And similar, like software engineering, the types of technologies we use are more modern. So by design, they're people in their 20s and 30s that have a lot of experience working with them technologies. And then we have a really, really strong gender split. So like a C-suite level, 45% of our C-suite are female. We have a female co-CEO. Our marketing team, we're about 50-50 at a company level. So yeah, overall, we have a very strong industry experience, B2C versus B2B. Age, I'd say, slightly skewed more to a younger demographic versus a traditional company. And yeah, we're very, very open-minded to new ideas. And like I said, we also have like a fairly open book policy on if you want to try a new tool. There's like as long as it passes our security approach, then people get to test it, trial it, roll it out. So we've recently been trialing a company called RunBear, who do like Slack bots for like knowledge, for our product knowledge. We use Zapier for like agentic flows. So like HR teams use Zapier for like triggering onboarding emails and that type of work. So we're always testing new things, because the thing with these tools as well is one moment you'll try them and they're not quite fitting the mark. 6 months later, you go and try them again and they've just moved on so much. So yeah, that's a little bit more insight into how we think about it at Thrive.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting point, because I've got that same experience where things are genuinely moving scarily fast, and you look at something 3 months ago and you go, oh, that's not quite right, or it didn't quite hit my use case, and it's evolved and changed in such a short period of time that it almost feels like you're behind even before you've started, and even when you start, it feels like you're still behind. And I suppose both Just and Thrive seem to be in a really nice position. They have a very clear view of how they're going to utilize technology, but not losing sight of either their overall vision of the organization or how the people play an important part. And I suppose when you're talking internally, or if you were advising someone who hasn't taken the leap yet and is still thinking about how they get this right, or are worried about doing something because they think it might impact how their people think about it, like what would you say to someone? What would you say to someone as a peer, Simon, or if you were advising a CEO about what to think about doing next, or how to approach AI in their business? How would you advise them, I suppose, because you guys are living it at the moment?
Yeah, so I suppose I'll take that question from the angle of with the business overall adopting AI and new technology and making that work. I think that the most important skill and capability that people are going to need, which is sustainable, is learning to learn, being curious. You mentioned it earlier, Toby, around growth mindset. So key bit of advice I would say is the technology might change. You just said how quickly things change just 3 months later. The technology might change, the context might change, but actually if someone's bringing that sense of curiosity, that they have learned how to learn, and they're bringing that to their work, and you've got that mindset and that behavior across the organization, then you've got that adaptability, that growth mindset sort of baked into the DNA of the company. And that is what is going to be hard to replicate, and is going to drive the longer term success. How do you do that? We've got it through storytelling. Whenever we talk about our culture, we bring out examples of where people are being curious and learning. We share stories about people across the organization, so we sort of spotlight it. We recognize it in performance management. We recognize not just what people have achieved, but how they've gone about their work, and being curious is one part of that. So examples of where they've taken ownership of their own learning. And I think linked to that also is recognizing the role of leaders and people managers in this, in terms of leading change and creating that environment where people feel safe to test and learn. So that would be my key advice, is to understand the context, understand the technology, but if you create something around curiosity and that growth mindset within the organization, then that is what is going to drive that longer term sort of sustainable success.
Yeah, I think that's such a great and quite a thought-provoking thing, because it comes down to like culture and behaviors. And if you are, regardless of the context, and I think that's really important, we get maybe caught up in this new thing called AI and get a bit worried about it, but organizations have been adapting to change and new things for a long time. And this may feel like the newest one and maybe the scariest because it's happening so quickly. But if you can create a culture where it is okay to experiment, it is part of performance cycles, managers are empowered to talk to their teams about it, they're allowed to experiment, and you create that behavioral culture, that is super powerful, because it almost becomes self-fulfilling, that people then take on behalf of the organization. And Frankie, is that how you think about how Thrive think about? You mentioned that everyone is allowed to experiment and kind of bring that to the table. How does that work organizationally? We were working with an organization recently where they had that similar policy, but I don't think they'd put the cultural or behavioral guardrails on it. So they just ended up with lots of different licenses to lots of different things that didn't coherently. Do you have like an AI strategy that sits at the leadership level that comes down through the organization? Or how do you think about that as a kind of a leader in the space?
No, before I start, I must say I completely agree with Simon. I thought it was a very thoughtful and considered way of someone in your position, how you think about that organizationally. I think my kind of slight interpretation of that is, with many things, if I look at, I've seen many revolutions in my career, kind of cloud, smartphones, and I've always seen some organizations. I worked in a big financial services organization before, and it's kind of like they sat back and were observing like the cloud, like, oh, I'll sit back and watch cloud for 5 years and see what happens. And now they're like 6-7 years behind and trying to build that skill set. And a lot of these like neobanks have grown because they were just first there. So I'm a big believer in kind of hands-on practical use of these tools, because I don't think you can theorize around what they can do or could do. I think you have to get hands-on. So clearly there's a risk of, as you say, as like fragmented tools. So whenever we do sign off someone going to do something, we ask them to write up what was it useful for, what were the pros and cons, what types of things could it be applied in, and then we might run trials of, say, Perplexity versus a ChatGPT Pro license versus a Zapier. And trying to determine where it could be applied to the business. And then when we make a business decision, we kind of double down. So we were testing a few tools. We're doing like custom GPTs as an example for product knowledge. But one of the things we found is Slack is our primary communication tool. So getting the information into Slack so people could use it was the most critical thing. And that's where we landed on Runbear instead of GPTs. So I think we definitely dual run things. Like, candidly, the VCs are all funding these companies, so it's quite cheap. Like, this is not, you're not spending tens of thousands of pounds. This is, I mean, a GPT Pro license is like £20 a month. Like, you can do quite a lot of testing with not a lot of money. So trying to theorize too much around like the policy or the guardrails isn't something we've done in our organization. But what we do encourage is kind of sharing, building in public, sharing your learnings, quick bite-sized videos. We got all of our managers together in March, and we give some demos of some tools that people have been using to help kind of speed up productivity. And encourage people to do the same. So for us, it's very much like encouraging people to get hands-on, encouraging people to trial, to identify what works and what doesn't. And then, for example, what we've recently done with our engineers is we did have some people with 2 licenses that's kind of the same thing. And then we gave them the choice. It's like, you can either have this one or this one, pick which one you'd like, and we'll remove the license for the second. And some people, if you're a front-end engineer, one tool works better than if you're a back-end engineer. So we do provide that flexibility to our team as well. But yeah, Sean, our founder, is every single day, have you tried this? Have you seen that? Perplexity have launched this new tool. So that curiosity piece that Simon mentioned, that is a skill that you just it's actually quite hard to teach, in my opinion. I think that's like a personality trait. You either are intrigued and you're on your commute and you're down a rabbit hole testing something new, or you have to push it and nudge people along. But I'd say so far we've got a very much like people are intrigued and interested and curious, and it's kind of one of our hiring principles as well. If I'm honest, we want to hire that type of mindset.
Yeah, and it is. It's a curiosity, and you can take people along the journey with you. What I've definitely found is, to your point, Frankie, is if you hire for the type of person, if it's part of the organizational DNA and culture, and in a genuine way, not just like values on a wall being curious, that people stand out pretty quickly if they're not. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to be a big strategic thinker. It's just a mindset that it's okay to do that, and they're given license to do that. And I think if organizations can be a bit more, you don't have to be top of the curve in terms of adoption, but you have to think about it, and you have to allow people to think about it. Otherwise, they're going to go and do something else. We're coming up to time. I could keep talking about this for a lot longer, and I really value and appreciate all the diverse inputs. I suppose I want to finish with one question, and then just maybe one little statement for you both. So the first is, generally, I feel like both of you are quite optimistic about AI and technology and where it's going. I suppose, any final thoughts of caution or things you're worried about, or maybe you'd say, as I suppose as a not guardrail is a wrong word, but as something maybe to think about. If we get it wrong, it could look like this, because everyone talks about all the benefits, but we're right at the cusp of this evolving and changing the way we work in a very, very meaningful way. But if you read any of the dystopian literature, we're all going to lose our jobs by next Tuesday, and I just fundamentally disagree with that. But I'd be really interested to get both your views on that. If you don't get it right, what happen, and how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I'm happy. I'm happy to go first. So 3 things if we get it wrong in my mind. So the first one is what I referenced before. I think the more junior members of the team that are new into their careers, missing the fundamentals and just becoming overly reliant. We have had some performance conversations with members of the team that have become reliant and have missed some fairly sizable holes, because AI can create very verbose information that can cause a lot of issues, particularly in an engineering context. So that's one, like, get the fundamentals right and nail that before you start using the tool as a force multiplier. The second one is more around the product. So clearly there's I'm super optimistic about what we can do, but we have to think about it in the right way. I think sometimes people choose AI to solve problems that it's like a solution looking for a problem. I actually went to the Snowflake conference yesterday, and I saw like a conversational interface trying to do something that coding would just be so much better to do. So like overuse of it just to say it's in your product. So for me, it's like where it can enhance the product, where it can enhance the experience, then use it. But if it's better to just have a button to tell you to do something, just put a button there as an example, or like solve the fundamental root cause issue. Don't just put AI on top of it to try and to make it different. So that's the second one. And then the third one is just more around, like I said, taking the team with us. I agree with you. I see it as like a huge productivity gain. We're growing very quickly at Thrive, so it's certainly never going to be an area that's going to be like a job. Like there's going to be no job losses on the back of AI. It will make us more efficient. So whether or not we need to scale the number of people to support more customers in the future, that may give us more efficiencies and leverage, but it certainly won't be this new AI tool has taken this job or this job. We just see it as a way to become more productive, higher velocity, do more great things for customers, answer questions quicker, 24/7, 365. Like there's so many different things it gives us that we wouldn't have had before. So it'll all be around the product improvements and the service improvements. That's where I see it happening. But yeah, I agree. I'm not concerned about the job loss at this stage. Certainly not in my industry.
Yeah. Great. That was awesome. Thanks, Simon. Over to
you. So maybe I'll go with 3 thoughts as well. I think one thought is that AI needs to augment human creativity. So I think AI is a creative assistant. It's not a creator necessarily. So that is one thing to really keep in mind in terms of how it's used. I think the second thing would be it is no doubt going to drive transformation. but actually it's not the technology that's going to dictate whether that transformation is successful. It is the capabilities that are cultural and behavioral around resilience and adaptability. So actually having those change capabilities is really critical to the success or otherwise of embedding AI, both locally within a business and I think more broadly. And then I think probably the third thing is just the sustainability of innovation. So the sense is at the moment that AI is driving huge innovation. But I think for that to be sustainable, we need to rethink and reorganize the way that we work. So that probably touches on some of the future capabilities that are going to be important, as well as systems and processes and organization design and all of those elements. So I think my reflection is huge opportunities, and we will capitalize on those opportunities if we get culture, behavior, and mindset right.
Great. Fantastic. I think between those three things, there's a whole other series of probably podcasts you could talk about each one individually. Really great insight, like genuinely, I think really thought-provoking for people who are either starting to go on this journey or in businesses where they want to start to drive that. But I think the point you made, Simon, I'm a massive believer in this. Most change, having worked in change for the vast majority of my career, most programs are successful or not successful, not because the technology was good, because it was adopted and delivered in the right way, and it was understood of the problem it was trying to solve. To your point, Frankie, there are a lot of nails hitting hammers because that's what it looks like, and AI is the hammer at the moment, and it will be interesting to see where that goes as the technology becomes better, more specific, and people start to get more comfortable with it. So just wanted to close on a question or a sentence to get you guys to finish. So maybe Simon, I'll come to you. So if you could finish the sentence, the future of work will be.
So I think the future of work will be human. It's going to be augmented by AI, and it's going to be purpose driven. And I think by human, touching on all of those skills that we've talked about around mindset and behaviors. By AI augmented, I mean that the transformation's happening quickly, but it's how people adopt it and use it that's going to be so essential and so important. And then I think purpose driven is the danger of AI is that it commoditizes, we mentioned earlier, commoditizes knowledge, and perhaps people feel that it might take meaning away from work. Some of the skills that they might have brought to work in the past about analysis and decision making and being creative could almost feel as though it's being replaced by AI. And I think that will drive people's hunger to really seek meaning and belonging at work. So human-led, AI augmented, and purpose-driven.
Sounds like the strap line of a new company that you might decide to form. Frankie, what about yourself? The future of work will be.
I think similar, three things super exciting. Like I generally thought through my career to date that I've been in like the crazy peak periods into the framing of the conversation. Like I think this feels like the quickest, highest velocity time we've ever worked in, which is amazing to be. So super exciting. The second one is ever evolving. Like I think someone actually messaged us and asked us for like our 5-year strategy in an RFP document recently. It was like, I've no idea what the world looks like in 5 years' time. I can tell you where we're looking in 1 to 2 years' time, and this is kind of how we see the world changing. But I think ever evolving and the ability to change direction and where you're heading is so critical. So number 2, ever evolving. And then the third one, which is kind of what I've just said, it's like the highest rate of change we've ever seen. So I think as you know, Toby, we've worked together before, but I value velocity over most things because I think you can iterate, you can improve, you can get better. So if you can create an organization that can just change at a rate of knots significantly greater than the industry, than your competition, than your customers need you to do, then actually you're always going to be able to keep up because the world is changing and you're moving at a rapid rate. So 3 things: exciting, ever evolving, and then at the highest rate of change we've seen to date will be my 3 items on that sentence.
Awesome. And I completely agree with both. And we see that with talking to the array of clients that we work with, that we see part of our purpose is helping our clients to adapt to that world that's changing so quickly, but with a real focus on the people. And it's been really nice to hear both your different viewpoints from two very different organizations, but with a really clear philosophy that people are really the differentiator, and it's about how you empower those people, give them the skills with genuine behaviors and cultures wrapped around it, with great leaders who can adapt and evolve. Because the next, I agree, Frankie, 5 years feels like a long way away. A year feels like a long way away, the way things are moving at the moment. So I just want to say a big thank you for joining me on the Human Advantage. Really appreciate the input and the thoughts. Thank you, Frankie. Thank you, Simon. Any final words, any comments? If not, I'll let you get on with your Fridays and your weekends.
Thank you for the invite. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Nice to meet you, Simon.
Awesome.
And you too.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Bye.